Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our AAP CARE project presentation on early relational health. My name is Dr. Amy Shriver. I'm currently the Vice President of the Iowa chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a member of the Council on Early Childhood. And this project is designed to help providers train their patients or talk to their patients and families about the importance of early relational health and help give them tools to be successful in their homes, in their communities, and to inspire providers to look for barriers to ideal health, address those, make referrals, and then advocate for other community-based resources. So here are our goals for today. We're going to define early relational health and explain why it is critical to healthy children, families, and communities. We're going to understand the role of screening briefly, although we won't, that's another topic. We will discover strategies to apply early relational health teaching during clinics, become familiar with the toolkit, and think about how we might apply some of these techniques to our own clinical practice. So it's important to understand why we are all here as humans and the human experience. Children are born into families and born to learn through the contingent interactions and strong foundational relationships that they have. So that is the way that we learn, is by looking at the faces of those who we love, listening to their voices, having them respond to us when we call to them. And we know that that develops a child's social and emotional health. But as social and emotional health is intertwined with cognitive health and other types of health, we, in order to promote a whole brain health, we need to focus on helping children with their secure attachments in order to help them learn. And in doing so, we cannot just focus on child health. We must focus on children in the context of their families and communities by addressing the needs of parents or other caregivers and the relationship between those caregivers and children in order for them to thrive. So to start, we think about brain development and the three core concepts. One is that our early experiences build our brain architecture. So we are hardwired to respond to our environment through our senses, and that then creates important connections in our brain. And we do that primarily through the work of serve and return interactions. So when we as children serve up some sort of a smile or a goo-goo or a cry, then the return is the family that comes and talks to us and addresses our needs, and that back and forth shapes how our brain grows and develops and how we understand our world. And then, of course, the fact that toxic stress or prolonged or severe stressful interactions that we have with our environment can derail our healthy development and change the way our brains grow, learn, and react and cope with stress. So we use the eco-bio developmental model of human health to think about the way children grow and learn, and to think about our role as providers in supporting good health. In the past, we had thought mostly that our ability to learn and grow was directed through our biology, or the red circle, our genetic potential. However, now we have a greater understanding of the green circle of our ecology, the social and physical environment in which we live, and that has a direct impact on the way our genes are expressed and the way that we grow. And then, of course, all of that has a direct impact on the way that we develop, learn, behave, and our overall health. So we know much more about the effect and the impact of our ecology on our environments. So this summarizes that with the interactive influence of genes and experience literally shape the architecture of our developing brain. And the active ingredient is that serve and return nature of safe, secure, nurturing relationships with our parents or caregivers. So again, to talk about stress, when we think about toxic stress, we often think about the Adverse Childhood Experiences study by Felitti, in which they looked at 10 specific areas of stress, including physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, and household dysfunction, such as an adult caregiver with mental illness, an incarcerated relative, domestic violence exposure, substance abuse in the home, or divorce, separation, or discord in the family relationships. So these are only some examples of ACEs that families can experience. These are the most studied. However, we have an expanded knowledge now of other social ACEs that can impact our lives, such as food insecurity, homelessness, and exposure to community violence, among others. When we have exposure to these prolonged or severe events in our lives, especially in our earliest years, this can impair our development, and this can impair our ability to learn as well. So you can see here on the left, the graph that shows if you have 7 or more ACEs, you are 100% likely to develop some delays in your development. So that there's rarely any study that shows 100%, but having that many ACEs pretty much guarantees that you will not develop as expected. And then the graph on the right shows the percent of students with academic concerns related to toxic stress or ACEs. So your ability to learn becomes impaired, and that is additive for the more ACEs that you have. And this, if you aren't familiar with it already, is the ACEs pyramid, which has been revised over the past 10 years to show the impact of historical trauma on our abilities to develop. So considering the history of our country of slavery and the epigenetic transfer of stress from that, as well as the continued systemic racism in our communities, that has a direct influence in how we are able to process our own stress and deal and cope with stress. And then, of course, the social conditions in which we are living has a huge impact. If we have experienced any of the ACEs we have mentioned before, this can cause a direct change in our brain's architecture and our ability to learn, have relationships, and cope with stress. And as we are impaired in those, we may also develop some social, emotional, or cognitive impairment that affects our relationships and our abilities to continue dealing with the stresses of becoming young adults. And therefore, that stress, we can adapt unhealthy behaviors such as smoking or drinking, overeating, or other things that can lead to increased disease, disability, social problems, and ultimately can lead to earlier death. Some studies suggest that if you have 7 or more ACEs, you may lose 20 years off of your life. And of course, we have gaps in research in these particular areas here that still need to be explored. Now, ACEs are not the entire story, and as we move further into early relational health, you might discover some solutions. So this is one of my favorite more recent studies that was published in JAMA Peds in 2019, which explains that in addition to having ACEs, there's positive childhood experiences that can also be additive in your life. And in a very small print on the right, you can see some of the examples of the positive childhood experiences, or PCEs, that were studied. For example, in your family, do you have the ability to talk to others in your family about your feelings? Do you feel like your family stood by you during difficult times? Do you enjoy participating in community traditions? Do you feel a sense of belonging in high school? Do you feel supported by your friends? Have you identified at least 2 non-parent adults in your life who took interest in you and supported you? And then do you feel safe and protected by an adult in your home? So those questions were asked of adults, and then some surveys were done on current mental health. And what they found was they also surveyed how many ACEs you've experienced, and they saw that people experience varying levels of ACEs. It's very common, as you can see, to have at least 1 ACE in your life. And then, so the more ACEs you have, the more likely you are to have poor mental health. However, if you follow the graph on the x-axis, you can see positive childhood experiences. So if you are low on positive childhood experiences, but high on ACEs, you're going to have a high likelihood of having mental health concerns. But if you have a high number of ACEs, but also a high number of positive childhood experiences, you can see in this graph the mitigation factor, in that your rate or your likelihood of having mental health issues dramatically decline. So the take home from this graph is that we can mitigate the effects of toxic stress by promoting safe, secure, nurturing relationships. And how do we do this? We use a two-generation approach. So sometimes in primary care, we are very child-focused and we talk only about how the child is doing and how the child's immediate health is. We also sometimes only focus on parent concerns, but when we work with a whole family approach and talk about parenting skills, family literacy, childcare work supports, food and nutrition, we are in essence creating a family unit that is more resilient and more able to experience that early relational health in a positive way. So here's the definition of early relational health. It's a framework. So it's just a way of thinking about how you are with your child. So it explores the role of early relationships and experiences in healthy development across a child's lifetime. Relationships, especially in those early years, are the things that create a foundation for lifelong growth and development. We will talk about another way of thinking about that just in a minute. So what should those relationships look like? A good, healthy relationship should be safe, meaning free from physical or psychological harm. And you can't learn unless you're in a safe environment. Otherwise, your brain is always constantly scanning its environment for danger. Stable is also important. You need to know that someone will always be there for you if you call for them. So if you have a feeling that your caregiver will meet your needs, you have the idea that the world is a safe place and that you have meaning in the world. So routines are something in early childhood that promote that feeling of safety, that help children deal with stress. Finally, nurturing. Nurturing means that you go to your child when they call to you, you try to figure out what they're trying to tell you, and that you respond to them in a way to make them feel safe and loved. So your child's physical, emotional, and developmental needs are sensitively and consistently met. They believe their caregivers will use warmth and clear expectations to foster their development, and that helps promote learning. So safe, secure, nurturing relationships. What are these? So they are a biological necessity for creating that foundation for health. They are created through everyday routines, rituals, and quality time, and they promote resilience. And so how do you know if a child has had some successful SSNRs? You will see behaviors such as your child seems curious, willing to explore their world, and shows initiative and will. They complete tasks that they're assigned, and they can stay calm and in control and persevere in the face of adversity. So those are some of the outcomes of strong SSNRs. So where did this concept come from, and where have we come from in terms of discussing SSNRs? So this is the 2021 policy statement revision from the original 2012 ACEs policy statement from the AAP. So this is a new one from Dr. Andrew Garner, saying we should work on preventing childhood toxic stress by partnering with families and communities to promote relational health. So that is what we are doing, and this is how we are doing it. This is the evolution. So the old framework talks about toxic stress and how your biologic processes are affected by stress. But the new framework talks about how relational health can promote and sustain safe, secure, nurturing relationships, or safe, stable, nurturing relationships. So you see how there's sort of a deficits-based approach from our initial thoughts about ACEs, and now we're using a strengths-based approach that talks about what we can do to actually stabilize families and increase and improve health. And then primary prevention, we were looking at ways that we could prevent or mitigate toxic stress, and now we have solutions for that by promotion of SSNRs and resiliency skills for families. Primary preventions are things that we do for everyone. Secondary preventions are things that we do for at-risk families. And tertiary preventions are things we do to support families who are already experiencing stress. So in the secondary prevention, you see that in the past, we were focusing on high-risk individuals, looking at ACEs scores. Now what we're doing is identifying barriers to developing SSNRs. So that means, is this family stressed out because they don't have enough food? Are they homeless? Do they not have appropriate health care? Do they not have transportation? Are they facing a lot of chronic health issues that need support? Finally, on the tertiary side, we look at ways to treat toxic stress. in the new relational health framework, we're looking at evidence-based practices to repair relationships and thinking about behavioral attachment catch-up, child-parent psychotherapy, or parent-child interaction therapy. So what are ways to improve our relationships, to improve that brain structure and function? And in summary, toxic stress defines the problem and relational health defines the solution. So in other words, this is how I like to think of it. You've got the poison, and the poison was the toxic stress from significant stress affecting your brain and affecting your relationships. And then the remedy is, Jason Mraz. That's one of my favorite songs by Jason Mraz is The Remedy. Positive childhood experiences can mitigate toxic stress and even reverse some of the effects that toxic stress can have on our brain and body to promote early relational health. So that is what this is focused on, and that is the importance of it, is that if we fail to acknowledge the importance for relationships, if we fail to talk about these things, then families are missing out on an important opportunity for foundational brain building in their children, and also building that ability for resilience in dealing with the stressors that life throws at them later. So why is this so important in pediatrics? Well, pediatric providers are a gateway. We are the gatekeepers of health. And so that means, number one, we are knowledgeable. We are child health experts. We contain the knowledge that families need in order to be successful. Second is that we are trusted. Families identify pediatricians as one of the top 3 most trusted professions. And we have repeated one-on-one contact. So we will see our patients at very early ages, earlier than any teachers are seeing you, earlier than many other professions will see you. So we see you again at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. We have plenty of opportunities to have these ongoing discussions. And the structure and the way that we are set up in pediatrics is to screen for things that could cause families trouble and to provide referrals. So this is the system set up for looking for ways to support families, both at a primary level as well as the secondary and tertiary level. So again, here's the framework we talked about. Primary, what can we do to approach relational health? We can promote SSNRs, build those 2 generational skills, build a therapeutic alliance, talk about positive parenting and talk about developmentally appropriate play. And we can provide support through positive parenting classes, use Reach Out and Read, the video interaction program, and other things designed to support families as the parent-child dyad, and then implement home visiting, support extended family medical leave. So there are lots of things we can do at the provider level, practice level, and community level. So that's our strengths-based guidance. And then at a secondary level, when we think about at-risk families, we can do some screening to identify barriers. What are those social determinants of health that are getting in your way of ideal health? Are you stressed out to the point where all you can think about is your next meal? In which case we need to help you with that so you're able to think more about relationships. So we are going to again build the therapeutic alliance, surveil for barriers, and champion screening at the practice level, and then make sure that we have appropriate referral resources, which in some communities can be a big challenge. We want to promote universal screening for barriers and then facilitate those referrals. And I'll talk a little bit about how Iowa is supporting our providers in doing that. And then identify and address sources of inequality, inequities, isolation, social discord, including those of poverty and racism. At a tertiary level, work on the repairing relationships. I'm sure all of us have experienced parents and children who come in with a lot of relationship concerns. So how can we best support those relationship problems? Build an alliance, employ a common factors approach, which I will talk about, explain behavioral responses to stress, as we have just done, and then endorse referral resources for those concerns about stress. And then we do at a practice level want to think about ways to make sure families reach their counseling services, and then track and follow up on referrals. And then finally, make sure that we're considering this on a community and society level with restorative justice and social inclusion. So that's a lot. So we do the strengths-based positive guidance, screening, and then referrals. Of course, we would love to do all of that, but there are some things that are holding us back. And here are some of the barriers that I listed, and perhaps you can think of even more. I think one of the number one barriers for us all is a lack of time. We are restricted in the amount of minutes that we get to spend with each of our patients, unfortunately, and that can lead to this may not always be the thing that we get to talk about. So today we're going to show some pretty simple ways that you can incorporate this discussion into your well visit activities. You might have a lack of effective tools, in which case that's part of why we're doing this webinar, is to give you the information you need, tools to talk about this, a digital toolkit, as well as a hands-on toolkit for using in your clinic. Then what about other competing priorities? We certainly have been dealing with a lot of illness lately. There have been some concerns about vaccines that we need to talk about. Some people are very interested in talking about growth. So there are a lot of competing priorities that take our time. So that's part of why we are doing this webinar, is to bump relational health up on your priority list so that you understand how this is really the foundation for all future health and learning. And then to really have you discuss this with other members of your team, so that this is not just a priority for one provider, but yet a priority for your entire clinic or your entire health system. And then, of course, the AAP is always a resource for helping with that. A lack of support or funding. Hey, this is great, but I don't have any support to do this, and I don't have any money to do this. Well, good news is that most of this is, there are lots of free resources, and just finding and collating them is what we are here for. And that's what those toolkits are for. And then, of course, when you think about supporting children and families, pediatricians are not the only ones doing that. We have daycares, we have preschools, we have libraries and museums and other child-based organizations out in the community that we can connect with and partner with. And then finally, compassion fatigue, which simply means, hey, you know, the last few years in pediatrics has not been easy. We've been facing a lot of our own challenges that have made us sort of exhausted. But the good news is that if you focus on our role, our very, very powerful role in early relational health, this actually can increase how good you feel about the job that you're doing, and the fact that you really can make a difference in individual lives, and perhaps on a larger scale when you partner with communities. So on to the toolkit. So I'm introducing the digital toolkit and showing you the different tables that are available, so that if you do go to this digital toolkit, which you will be given, then you will understand each of the resources provided. So we'll kind of get into the weeds about this a little bit. The first table is, how do we answer the question, what is early relational health, and how do we help our families that we take care of understand the importance of it? So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. When you connect to the resources here online, you will see resources from the American Academy of Pediatrics on explaining early relational health and providing more tools for you. There are videos that you can look at for your own knowledge if you'd like, including Introduction to Early Relational Health, Part 1 and 2, and then the implementation guide. So, but to make it more simplified, if you don't have time to go to all those websites, I have condensed it into some very easy little mini bites of information that you can pass along to your own family, pass along to your relatives, pass along to everyone that you teach in a professional sense. So it is the what, when, and why of early relational health. Hopefully all of this will also have a how to do it as well. So let's start with the what, these unforgettable, forgettable moments. The when, bonding with your child, we will talk about, and then the why with atomic parenting. So what is early relational health? We already talked about the framework of the child and family and the experiences that they have together, the supports we can provide, and then our impact on the ecosystem. So we think about the child and family experiences being shared reading, playtime, healthy routines, fun routines, and family rituals. When we talk about supports, we think about ways in which at-risk families might need support from us in terms of our home visiting program in Iowa, a program called First 5 Iowa that I hope everyone is accessing. Early Access, which is our 0 to 3 developmental program in Iowa. other food banks and childcare and other resources in the community. And then what about our ecosystem that supports children and families? We think about parks, libraries, museums, other child-based centers and schools, among others. So here's the what. I talked about those unforgettable, forgettable moments. That's a phrase that's very easy to remember because it gives you a particular feeling. What is an unforgettable, forgettable moment? Well, when you spend time feeding your child, when you spend time playing in the bathtub with them, they remember those moments as part of what makes them who they are. So when you have a child that has a lot of these positive memories, when they reflect as an adult, they reflect upon how they were parented in order to be successful parents. So the little things that you can do every day that seem forgettable to you as a parent are actually embedding themselves in that child's body, in their brain, and in their ability to be healthy adults and future parents. It's similar, actually identical, is a phrase that I really like called extraordinary ordinary moments. So the little moments that you spend that you might not pay attention to, maybe you're all in the car together singing a song, those again can become core memories for children that make them feel safe, secure, and loved. Caring connectedness is another way of thinking of it. So when you're attuned to your child, when you're responsive and nurturing to your child, and you show them how you care through your actions and your words, then that builds healthy brains and bodies for our children. And then another great phrase that you can use is called mini moments that make us. So again, these early relational health moments are foundational for all of our future health and learning. So what about when? When should we do all of this ERH? When are we doing it? We're very busy parents. We might be working families. So I created this phrase that you can use in your primary care office or wherever you want, called bonding with your child. So I think we all know what bonding with your child means, but this tells you when you can do it. So the acronym stands for B is for bedtime and bath time. O is for outside. So thinking about those moments, hopefully warmer than it is today, where you can be outside with your child at a park or just taking a walk. And then N is for nutrition time. So meals, we're required to be with our children at mealtime when they're young, feeding them. And then when you're driving back and forth places, these are times when parents are automatically with their child. And so these are the small daily opportunities we have to have those positive, hilarious, wonderful, magical interactions with our children just every day. Okay, what about atomic caregiving? What is that? So I don't know if anyone has read the book Atomic Habits, but I am borrowing heavily from the idea about tiny changes and remarkable results. So what are atoms? They are the smallest unit of matter. And just thinking about the way our very small daily interactions with our children don't seem like much, but they are the foundation for everything, just as atoms are the foundation for all matter. You can see that atoms contain a nucleus, and of course, the family has a nucleus as well. You think about the caregiver and child nuclear family and their dyadic interactions and how valuable and important that is. And then, as we know, atoms can contain a very explosive power. So think about how powerful it is when you add up all of those tiny, tiny little daily moments. So here's another acronym for atomic caregiving, which is attuned, affectionate caregiving, time after time together creates ordinary magic. So that's one way that you can look at atomic caregiving. Now, I'm not completely insensitive to the fact that parenting is exhausting. As a parent myself, I can relate. And so it's important to acknowledge to families that even when you're trying your very best, sometimes you need a little break. And so you can also think of atomic caregiving as requiring energy. So at times, parents need to put on their own oxygen mask and make sure they are taking care of themselves to be the best parents they can be. And I did include this slide, but you don't have to include it in your discussions with families. I just liked the idea that if you think about nuclear fission, you can see that we fire a neutron at some uranium, and then that makes the uranium unstable, and then it breaks apart into these radioactive elements, and then creates a huge explosion of energy. So when we think about a nuclear family, And when there's fission or breaking apart of that family unit, it can create some negative energy. As opposed to fusion, when two elements come together and create a nucleus that then has kind of some harmless gas that's released, and then a lot of positive energy that comes out. So fusion, or bringing two elements together, bringing that family unit together, tends to be much more positive than the fission. Okay, so the next table on this digital toolkit that we're providing to you is about resources for use in your primary healthcare clinic. And there's a huge long list. There's some links for you, but I'm going to go through a few. So you can see that the ones in red are the ones that I'd like to talk a little bit more about. And of course, there are other ones that are available to you as well, but I don't want to take up all the time. So the first thing I want to mention to you is the usefulness in your clinic of QR codes. If you know of websites for families, including, hey, here are some great book lists for you. Here are some resources like books on positive parenting or websites for positive parenting, classes you can take on positive parenting. Here's a place you can go to figure out how to play with your child at different ages. So you can create this QR code. So if you happen to be watching this and you have a phone, you can actually just turn your camera on and click on and shine it on this QR code, and it will take you directly to one of those resources. And we will provide you in your toolkit with several different QR codes that you can hand out to families. And of course, you can create your own QR codes. So then I want to talk to you about what's on the AAP website for addressing early relational health. One thing that they do through a series of videos is to talk to you about what you should do in your well child visits to address early relational health. And the first step is to observe parent-child interactions. So what are you seeing? And if you can identify strengths, you should discuss those strengths. And then if you are seeing or hearing some inter-family conflict, you should make sure to, with permission, give caregivers the space to share. And then instead of, blaming or shaming or instructing, you can invite the caregivers to wonder with you, wonder why the behaviors are that they are, why the feelings are that they are. Acknowledge that there are a lot of challenges and validate feelings always. And then make sure you're talking in a strengths-based way and building on strengths. So one tool that they will also provide to teach you with is this common factors, which you heard mentioned earlier. Common factors means that when you have conversations with families, you're always thinking to provide them hope. So one strategy to say is, I have had some success with other families when I talk about X, Y, or Z. And so you're giving them hope because you said that you've tried this with other families and it has worked. Empathy is obviously given through listening, acknowledging struggles, and just being in the moment with the families. And then you can do that with struggles, but also with joy. And then language and loyalty, using the child and family's language to talk about problems, and then make sure that you let them know that you're loyal and committed to helping them succeed. And then when you approach any sort of family struggle, always ask permission. So we're using motivational interviewing to say, is it okay if we talk about X? Is it okay if I share some resources with you? So, open that door to permission. Is it okay that we create a plan together? Here we go. So P stands for permission, partnership, and plan. So that's the HELP model. Another resource that I often offer for families is called Circle of Security. And I do want to show you, hopefully, this short video about what Circle of Security is. But this is a very popular model for families to use to think about ways that they can be the best parents by promoting secure attachments with their young children. So the principles I have simplified. There are more principles to the Circle of Security model, but they start with all caregivers want what is best for their children. And I think we also start with that in primary care. And then attachment problems can kind of lead to adjustment problems in life and relationship problems down later in life. So if you have at the initial part of your life a good attachment, you are more likely to be successful. So secure attachments are protective for young children. and giving them more coping skills. And they talk about the model of allowing a child autonomy and freedom to explore by going out. And then as part of the return in the circle, they come back in, and then the family has a hands-on approach with them as they come back to the family. So let's see if we have a moment and see if this video will work. Crossing my fingers.
Parents, we all wonder if we're getting it right. We want to know we're meeting our children's needs, helping them grow, and giving them all that we can. We try to combine our own experience of being parented with the advice of others and our own instincts and beliefs about what is best. And still, we so often worry that we're not succeeding. In a world that is always offering the next best parenting solution, the circle of security is based on decades of attachment research. Unlike many behavioral perspectives, it offers relationship tools to provide a new way of understanding your children's needs, creating lasting security for them and more satisfaction for you. The circle graphic has been created to help you know what to look for, so you can read your children's behavior to guide you in meeting their needs. It's really not complicated. People of all ages have attachment needs. These needs can be divided in 3 ways. Let's look at this child. First, he needs to know the freedom and confidence to go out and explore his world. Second, he needs to feel assured that whenever he's ready, he can come back for comfort and protection. Third, he needs his caregiver to be in charge in a kind way. 3 basic needs that can be thought of as going out on the circle, coming in on the circle, and hands on the circle. Let's have a look in more detail. Feeling safe and supported, our children want to discover their world. When going out, they need to know that their exploration is encouraged, that we're right there watching over them, delighting in them, offering help when needed, and ready to enjoy their new adventures with them. And when they're coming in, they need us to refill their emotional cup. This means organizing their emotions and letting them know we are delighted to welcome them back, protect, comfort, and understand them. The key for us as parents is to remain strong and kind while knowing when to encourage their going out into the world and how to be available to welcome them back to us. It's crucial that we learn to identify our children's needs like this, because misreading them, or worse, missing them altogether, can cause pain and frustration. We all know how uncomfortable it can be to be held too close when we want to be out exploring, or kept at a distance when we need emotional support, or simply to be without someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind, who we can trust to understand what we need when we're feeling lost, confused, or out of control. When a child misbehaves, the cause is often rooted in how safe and secure they're feeling. So it's not surprising that they behave well when a parent learns to tune into their child's needs on the circle in this way. And because our needs on the circle never disappear, learning to read cues can help you better understand and meet the needs of people of all ages, including your own. So,
all right, so hopefully that gives you the gist. Feel free to watch the rest on YouTube if you would like. I'm gonna keep going here, maybe possibly. Here we go. So another resource that can be used in your clinic is Reach Out and Read. There are over 100 clinics that actually practice the Reach Out and Read model in primary care in Iowa, and we're ever expanding. And just a disclosure, I'm the medical director for Reach Out and Read Iowa, which is a national organization that partners with pediatricians and other primary healthcare providers to hand out books at every well-child visit and talk about early relationships and talk about age-appropriate shared reading as a tool for social and emotional development, relationship building, and school readiness. So there are lots of resources at the Reach Out and Read webpage, and including ebooks, ways to learn at home, early literacy resources in Spanish, screen-free activities, and then here is a book list that talks about diverse and inclusive books, and this makes a great handout for families. Another program that is out there for providers is called Promoting First Relationships. This is a program that actually costs money to do, and it's a several-day program given through the University of Washington's, a private group that launched from the University of Washington. But it talks about relationship-based care. It talks a lot about the Platinum Rule. The Golden Rule is, of course, do unto others as you would have them do to you. The Platinum Rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto others. And so it's essentially modeling the way by showing the kind of relationship you wish the family had with their child and modeling that with the parent. How do we do that? We do it through a process of joining, which is coming in to our visit with a very positive relationship focused attitude, and then making sure to greet the family in a way that helps them know that you can relate to them and that it is a safe space. And then providing reflective questions and comments that help families understand their child better. So if a family has a concern, for example, about their child's sleep, you might ask them a little bit more about that and ask them why they think their child's having trouble sleeping and get them to reflect on those behaviors. We provide also positive instructive feedback. So if you notice a family doing something that you think is wonderful, you should tell them not only that you think it is wonderful that they're doing that with their child, but also what that's doing for that child's growth, development, and learning. So if you see them reading together in your office, you can say, hey, I'm so proud of you guys for doing that shared reading. Shared reading can build a child's expressive and receptive language, also can build their social and emotional well-being, make them less hyperactive, and decrease both parent and child stress. So there are some tools that you can use just by watching someone and observing them and telling them why what they're doing is so powerful. And then, of course, there is a lot of power in giving handouts, and some people like paper handouts. There are a lot of great ones through this program and through others as well. And then I do like to talk about the good enough parent. So a lot of parents feel very frustrated because they think they're a bad parent because they're not always in tune with their children. But talking about the good enough parent means that you can reassure families that there's so much power in rupture and repair. So if you're not in sync with your child 100% of the time, that once you are able to kind of calm down and come back in with your child and do some repairs, that actually builds a lot of strength and resilience and trust. Another resource for providers is the Mount Sinai Keystone Curriculum. It was designed for residents to learn about how to incorporate discussion of early relational health into well visits, and it is a long 4-hour training program. You can get it for free, and this is a QR code that will actually take you to a list of parenting handouts. This picture is an example of a handout that talks about things that we want you to know about your child's development during a newborn visit. And then at the bottom of the page, it talks about a group called Vroom. Vroom is something I recommend as an app for families that teaches you skills in interacting with your young child appropriately at each age, and then also talks about the brainy background of why that's so helpful. So that's that positive instructive feedback. So through the Mount Sinai Keystone Curriculum, families or providers learn how to talk to families about creating that secure attachment, allowing that sense of autonomy and exploration that kids need, how to help children manage their big feelings, how do we change perspectives and talk about perspective taking, which is the beginning building blocks of empathy. How do we encourage problem solving and knowledge, which are part of executive function skills. So again, this is another QR code, and this is an example of the 4-month handout that talks about things that you can do at 4 months to improve or support your child's growth and well-being, and then a game from Vroom and why that game works. So great handouts that you can use to promote early relational health. Another website that I recommend for families and that you can also recommend is called Sesame Street and Community. Now, many of us grew up on Sesame Street or are familiar with Sesame Street, but this is specially curated by pediatricians and other child health experts to support children in their social and emotional growth. So this website is not just Muppets, it's Muppets helping families care and connect with their children. And the mission of Sesame Street and Communities is strong, let's see, smarter, stronger, kinder. So trying to help children be smarter, stronger, and kinder. So there are multitudes of resources for children and families around early relational health. This is just one example. The purple means that this is a handout for families to read to understand frustration of young children and their big feelings. And again, this QR code will take you directly to the Sesame Street in Community's website. I really recommend that you take a few moments on your own to explore the site and discover some of the tools you can use in your clinic and the handouts you can have pre-printed for families, because they do address a lot of the same concerns that your families will address in your clinic. Often when I have a family who says, wow, my child can't sleep, I really wish I had some help, I said, I can give you some help, and would you also like the Muppets to help you? And they say definitely. So another thing that we can do in primary care to support early relational health is by modeling our behaviors. And so what are the ways in which we can model the behaviors of early relational health? Well, one interesting way is through finger puppets. And one of my colleagues, Gretchen Domek, actually did a study on promotion of finger puppets in primary care to support child and family interaction at the earliest ages. So these simple and inexpensive finger puppets can be given out at well visits to talk to families about the importance of having these positive, nurturing interactions with young children. And they're very positively received by families and a very joyful experience for a lot of kids. So this will be part of your actual toolkit, is to have a sample of finger puppets. We can also model through games, and many of us do lap visits for our toddlers, and so playing games like peekaboo with them demonstrates to families that peekaboo and other games are actually brain building and strengthen that dyadic relational health. Singing songs as well. So oftentimes to distract children, to help them feel comfortable when they might be feeling anxious or nervous during an exam, you can sing a song. We don't have to be professional singers in our clinic, but doing that models for families that singing songs is actually something we want you to do with your child, we expect you to do, and that actually has a lot of pleasurable benefit in increasing language development and connection. And then reading books. So again, with Reach Out and Read, for example, we hand out books during our well visits, but not only do we hand them out, we actually give them to the child, and sometimes we read them with the child, including a technique called dialogic reading, in which we point to items in the book and we have children describe what's happening or answer questions or identify objects in the book, which actually increases their child's comprehension of books and love of reading. And finally, I included the VIP here, which was mentioned earlier. The Video Interaction Project is a relationship-based individualized parent-child intervention that happens during pediatric primary care. Now, it's a little unrealistic for most of us to think about having a special expert come in, have a half-an-hour visit with a family, video them playing with their child, and then review the video. That's essentially what the VIP project is. So I don't expect any of us to be able to afford that or have time to do it or have the resources. However, when you do this other modeling play, it does hold up a mirror to families about ways in which they can play. So it helps them examine their own play. So think about these little things that we do, like singing and playing and finger puppets and reading, as our own example of this very successful video interaction project. So here I wanted to introduce you to an in-clinic model for reflective parenting to create resilient, nurturing families. This was developed actually by me as a response to the fact that I felt like we did not have a good kind of synthesized discussion about stress. In our clinic, we talk a lot about healthy growth and healthy habits through a model called 5210. And that's been really effective in my discussions about how to set goals for healthy living, with the 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, the less than 2 hours of screen time for young children, the 1 hour of exercise or physical activity, and the 0 sugary drinks. Just a framework, just a nutshell framework. And from there, you can choose to discuss more as needed. This is our nutshell framework that you can use to discuss parenting. So the CC part starts with talking about what you need to have as a healthy child, but also especially in times of stress. If you're stressed out, you need to have connections. You need to feel like someone has your back. You need to reach out and get help when you're feeling frustrated. The next one is coping. So adults who are working on coping will often have a self-care plan for how they can cope. Sometimes coping involves relationships. Sometimes it involves meditation or mindfulness or therapy. For young children, coping means having secure routines and someone that has always got their back when they're upset. And then 1, 2, 3, what should we do to parent our children that is positive? So 1 means take one moment when your child has a big feeling or your child's acting out. Take one moment to reflect on that. Why are they doing that? And how can you best be responsive to their needs developmentally? And then that one moment to take to forgive yourself if you're not a perfect parent. And then second is 2 arms for holding and 2 eyes for seeing. So that means we need to be able to give our children attuned positive attention and physical affection. And then 3, what are 3 ways you can show your child you love them every day? So that's a process of reflecting to help families really think about ways they can incorporate demonstrations of love and nurturing every day. The next part of the toolkit has resources for you to think about, to give to families that they can actually do in the home. So one of the resources is from Head Start, and this is the QR code that can take families directly to that. And it talks a lot about positive behavior support. How can you encourage positive behaviors and sort of discourage some of the tantrums and other developmental behaviors that are seen? There are even handouts for families that talk about ways they can do that. And it can also be interactive with setting lists of ideas to try. Another thing that families can do at home is receive this just-in-time parenting newsletter. So they have newsletters that are for each month of a child's life. So you can see on the right, this is for 2 months of age and what to expect for parents to take good care of themselves and for parents to address baby's needs. And then on the left side, you can see month 12 and what to think about, how to have a concept of what to expect at age 1 and how to make sure you as a parent have the skills you need to deal with your new emerging independent toddler. And again, this QR code would take you straight to this website. Another important thing to talk to families about that to really encourage them to do in their own homes is to play with their children. And sometimes parents know how to do that. Sometimes they do not. I really recommend this vroom.org. It is a website, but it is also an app that families can put right on their phone. And it talks about developmentally appropriate ways to engage with and play with your children, but not only tells you what to do, but tells you the brainy origins of why that's so important to do with your children. And then, of course, if you haven't already used it, healthychildren.org is the #1 website that I refer all parents to. It is based off of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and all of the articles are written by pediatricians that really address most of the concerns that families have about early childhood and really support playing. So this is an example of just a clip from one of the articles about ways that you can build life skills through play from healthychildren.org. Another organization that has great resources for families at home is 0 to 3. And this is an example of what to do between 12 and 24 months to support growth and play. So possibilities for play grow by leaps and bounds when your toddler is able to move around. So that's movers and shakers. And then finally, if you have not ever seen this website, I encourage you to go there and provide QR codes or teach your families how to do this. So the Genius of Play helps you create free, ways of engaging with your child in play that has nothing to do with screen time, that does not cost you any money, that you can do simply at home. And it's categorized in each age group, and it will also tell you the benefits of doing so. Another resource, which can be parent-directed or provider-directed, is the Harvard Center of the Developing Child. This is a handout that I really love called the 5 Steps for Brain Building. And this is the QR code that will take you directly there. But the steps include notice your child and then notice that when the child serves up something that they want you to see. So you can see in the picture here, there's some shared attention and shared focus. So understand that shared attention and focus are the first step for your child to feel attached to you and to learn from you. And then the second one is returning the serve by supporting, encouraging, elaborating on what that child's attention was all about. And then third is give it a name. When you see a child inquiring about something, curious about something, describe it more and really elaborate on that. And then the fourth one is take turns to kind of go back and forth And then the fifth one is practicing endings and beginnings. So really be cognizant and aware of when your child is starting an interaction with you around a certain subject, and then when they're done with it. And I really liked that because I don't think I was very good at recognizing when my young child was done with something. I don't have all the time to go over all of the possible additional resources for families at home. This is available through the AAP. And we talked about Circle of Security. There are other resources such as, and we talked about the Mount Sinai Parenting Center. There's Parents as Teachers. There's the CDC's Positive Parenting Tips, Prescription for Play, Regen Read, Triple P, lots of other resources here. And then at the last part of our digital toolkit includes resources for connecting families to the community. Again, this is for that secondary and tertiary approach to early relational health. And I can't fully elaborate on this, but what I want to do is show you three things. First is an organization called First 5 Iowa. This is a public-private partnership that bridges primary care and public health services. So I use this in my clinic, and if you don't have it in your clinic, you should definitely go to this website and connect your clinic with this resource. So basically, if I identify someone with a developmental concern or a concern for homelessness or other stressors such as food insecurity, transportation, domestic violence, I can refer them to First 5, who will continuously work to connect them to services in the community and then return back to you with the information you need to make sure that family has received what they need. You are probably familiar with early access. Early access is our state's 0 to 5 or 0 to 3 referral source for developmental concerns. And actually, if you go to the early access website, you will see that not just kids with developmental concerns, but premature infants, infants that have been exposed to lead. There are a lot of young children who qualify for early access support. So it's worthwhile to visit and see who qualifies and who you should be referring there. And then finally, don't forget about resources in your community like public libraries. They often will have programming specific to young children and families that promote early relational health, and those are free. At our clinic, we created a partnership with the Des Moines Public Library, and they were promoting 5 simple steps to health, which is talk, sing, read, play, and write. And so those 5 steps, when children and families work together, help promote good relational health and overall growth. So in summary, make sure that you're assessing relational health in your clinic by surveillance, by questioning, by observations, and sometimes with screening forms, although we didn't talk about that as much today. Make sure that you are aware of how to provide guidance around that. And we talked about some of those phrases that you can use to emphasize those small everyday moments. And then we gave you an array of resources for you to provide to families in clinic and some resources for families to use at home. And then just some thoughts about community-based resources, although that's very individual to your own communities. And then emphasis on making sure referrals happen when they need to support children and families at risk or who are already experiencing stress. And then to continue, now that you are more knowledgeable about the importance of early relational health, to continue to advocate for community supports for families. And that is the end.